You guys took a stance on credo baptism versus paedo baptism. Something bugging you? Come on in. Let's go for a drive. We're going to start another episode with Roscoe of What's Bugging You. Thank you guys for joining me. These are two of our Gap Year students at Summit Gap Year. They had an assignment just this last week. Well, like an optional class, right? For public speaking. And you guys chose something we didn't really expect. They chose to do a debate. It wasn't supposed to be a debate, but you chose to speak on two differing opinions, topics, whatever, when it comes to baptism. And so I thought, Roscoe's interested in baptism. He doesn't
Has
always
Roscoe been baptized?
He has. His windshield wipers are very slow, though. So he's not. Anyway, we need to talk about this a little bit more, I think. Anyway, so this is. Well, I'll let you introduce yourselves and tell us where you're from.
Yeah, I'm Quinn. I'm from Washington State, but I've been living in Montana for the past year.
Okay.
And I'm Daniel. I'm from Indiana.
Cool. Well, thanks for joining us. I've enjoyed having you guys as students. They're pretty bright, but I do need to say, and they want me to say this too, they are by no means professionals when it comes to baptism. This is something they're beginning to think about. And in our Gap Year program, we are, we're pretty particular about the closed-handed essential doctrines of Christianity, but there are some open-handed issues that are really just fun to talk about. This falls in, for Summit anyway, falls in that realm of open-handed issues that's fun to talk about. Summit doesn't take a hard stance on it, but you guys took a stance on credo baptism versus paedo baptism. So start off, just tell us what that difference is, and then one of you chose one side and one of you chose the other.
Yeah, so credo baptism is the belief in believer's baptism, which means that you should only get baptized once you have made a profession of faith. And that's the side that I took.
Okay.
When it comes to paedo baptism, it means that you believe in infant baptism, which is where you are baptized as soon as, or as an infant, really dedicated to the faith in that way.
Okay. You want to add anything to that, Daniel?
Yeah, paedo baptism is part of the parents bringing in the child into the church.
Okay.
I think we talked about a little bit about why this is important or why it's not important. Some of it has to do with the argument, the tangent, separate argument about whether baptism is in and of itself efficacious.
What does that mean?
Efficacious meaning does it do anything of its own self, or is it just a symbol of something?
Okay. Okay. So why did you guys choose to debate this particular topic? I mean, you had 7 minutes to give a speech to the class. Why did you choose this?
Yeah, so when we were in class, we were given an assignment to choose a topic that we were really interested in or that we knew a lot about. And previously we and a few other students had decided to do a debate about this topic, but it never ended up happening. And so Daniel and I both decided that we really wanted to know more about this, and we wanted to really think through the ideas. And so we decided to take opposing sides, not necessarily sides that we fully were invested in, but just to really learn about it more, and so we can have a more informed view on it. Because it's really important. Baptism is really an important thing in the Christian faith. It's one of those core things that has always been talked about.
Okay, cool. All right, so I know we only have a few minutes here, but I'd love to hear the basics, maybe some of the most powerful arguments or evidence you found for the side that you argued for, and then we can talk about it from there. Daniel, why don't you go first, since paedo baptism comes first, typically.
Mainly the argument comes from the fact that in the Old Covenant, children were circumcised, and they were circumcised as children, 8 days old. They don't have any choice in the matter. But that's how they were brought into the covenant community of God's people. That is what the church is today, is the covenant community of God's people. Whether or not you say the church is the replacement Israel or not, they are still the covenant community of God's people. And in Colossians 2:11 through 12, Paul says, "In him also you were circumcised with the circumcision made without hands, by putting off the body of the flesh, by the circumcision of Christ, having been buried with him in baptism." And so there we see, Paul directly connects baptism and circumcision. circumcision was the sign by which, you were brought into the old covenant. Baptism is the sign by which you're brought into the new covenant.
Okay.
Jay Adams gives a scenario where, if a Jewish father circumcises his child, that child's now part of the covenant community of Israel. And then the next day, Peter gives his Pentecost sermon. Well, if credo baptism is the case, that means that child is no longer part of the covenant community and has to grow up and make a decision. And that simply does not make consistent sense at all.
Okay. And in this realm of paedo baptism, does baptism do something, or is that a different conversation that different people hold?
I really think I brought that up, and we didn't really finish that thought. I really don't think that's terribly important. If to this argument, it is important, but it's not terribly important to the argument. If baptism does do something and is effective, I mean, yeah, it's important whether we baptize our children, but perhaps that should be accompanied by a decision as well.
Okay.
And if baptism is just a symbol, well, the symbols still matter. I mean, Scripture's full of symbols.
Okay. Well, and earlier I noted that you said it's either efficacious or it's just a symbol. I wonder if there's something in the middle there, like just a symbol may be too far, but if it's efficacious in the sense of that's the thing that saves you, maybe that is also a little too far if we just take that ground. Maybe, that's another conversation,
I
right?
think I concur, but
okay. Okay.
I think the question of paedo baptism versus credo baptism is
a little separate than that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, they kind of relate, but not.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. And then
some of the main points when it comes to credo baptism is just the New Testament theme. The New Testament is for us, it's for the church, and so it's most applicable to us. So when looking at what baptism, how we're supposed to do baptism, we really need to look at the New Testament. There's a lot of consistent themes in the New Testament about they believed and were baptized. They believed and were baptized. And so when you look at this theme, it's very clear, or I think it's more clear, that the order of events is supposed to be believed and baptized. In Acts 2, when when Peter gave his sermon, it talked about how they received the word and then they were baptized. In Acts 16, when Paul and Silas get out of that jail and talk to the Philippian jailer, his whole house believed and were baptized. And there are several other examples of this, like the Ethiopian eunuch in Acts 8. And it's just a very, very consistent theme. So that's one of the main points when it comes to credo baptism. But on top of that, we also acknowledge that the old covenant is it can be similar, and there's a lot of similarities between baptism and circumcision, but there are some key differences, and that's why we think that the point of believing and then being baptized is one of those differences. For instance, we aren't just baptizing the males. When they were circumcised, they only circumcised males, and you can even view it as that baptism is like a rebirth. You are reborn when you believe, and therefore you are being re-circumcised, sort of reflecting what happened before. You're being reborn, and then you are being baptized after you have believed. And so there are a lot of things that can still be consistent, even though there are some key differences that happen. And also, when it comes to believers' baptism, we don't think it's anything efficacious. There's nothing that specifically happens, but it's a very, very important symbol. Like, this is something that God commanded us to do, and we should take that seriously. It's not something that we shouldn't do just because it's not efficacious.
Okay, cool. Well, as you guys have now researched, you've even had to argue for a particular position. Has your position changed or been more solidified in a particular direction?
I think for me, I came into last semester not knowing too much about baptism and different views on it, and I leaned more towards paedo baptism after hearing about paedo baptism last semester. I came from more of a credo Baptist background, but now after researching the topic, I think I'm leaning more towards credo baptism.
Okay. And what about you, Daniel?
Yeah, for me, it was the same thing. I came from a very credo Baptist background. Really thought paedo baptism was pretty silly, honestly. But again, looking into the arguments last semester, I found, there's actually some good arguments here.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, I would actually still lean toward credo baptism, but I definitely am not settled on the issue. I'm pretty much on the fence.
Okay.
And I've chosen to present the views for credo baptism, or for paedo baptism.
Yeah.
rather.
Yeah. Okay, so are you going to keep studying this? Is it going to keep coming up? What are you going to look into? And really, I'm asking because if some of our listeners are curious, maybe there are some resources that you guys could point them towards.
Yeah, I think that one of the key terms that you need to know when looking into paedo baptism is covenant theology, because a lot of things are based off of covenant theology when it comes to paedo baptism. And that's something that I still don't know very much about, and I want to learn a lot more, because there are some people here at Summit and some friends that I know that are paedo Baptists that know a lot more about that topic and might have more reason to believe it because of that.
Okay. What about you, Daniel?
Yeah, I don't know if I have any particular resources. It honestly, again, I'm not an expert, so it was honestly just a matter of reading some internet articles.
Okay.
One that was really helpful, and I don't have it in front of me.
Well, the thing is, other than when you guys were just kind of thinking about yourself, the assignment you had 1 day to prepare a speech, and they just chose this.
Yeah. We had done some previous research the last semester when we were talking about the issue, but
Okay. Well, I'm proud of you guys for looking into it deeper and and choosing that to be something because you wanted to learn more about it. Then you chose that to incorporate it into this public speaking discourse that we did. So, yeah, good job. Great conversation. Roscoe was telling me that he enjoys this. He was certainly going to look into it a little bit more because I've never submerged him. He's only been sprinkled.
Oh man.
So we gotta really